Hello, fitness business nerds. What's up? Welcome to another episode of the Business for Unicorns podcast. And today I'm super stoked because you're going to be talking with me and one of my besties and fellow Unicorn Society coach. It's Ben Pickard. What's up, my friend?
Hello. Thanks for having me.
It's been a hot minute since you've been on the podcast, hasn't it?
Yes, it's been way too long. And then I kind of cheated on us and went on the Lift the Bar podcast and got great feedback about that. So I'm excited to be back to home base.
Wow. Finally back in the loving embrace of the BFU podcast. But we love the Lift Bar podcast too. So it's not, I guess it's not technically cheating if, we're more than like a polygamous relationship with the Lift the Bar podcast. Yeah.
True.
Yeah. That's amazing. Well, friends, before we dive into today's content, I want to talk a little bit about the fact that we have a retreat coming up where Ben and I are going to be with Mark Fisher and Pete Dupuis, and we're going to be in Las Vegas for our Unicorn Society retreat. We do, I think, 3-4 retreats a year with Unicorn Society folks. And one of the things I'm excited to tell all of you about is that you can join us in Vegas if you want. As of the launch of this podcast, there are just a few spots available, and we truly mean a few spots. That's not just a marketing ploy. There are truly a few spots available for non-Unicorn Society members to join us for our 2-day retreat in Las Vegas. And this early bird period ends to get these extra spots on February 26th. So if you're listening to this podcast before February 26th, 2023, go to businessunicorns.com, follow the prompts, and join us for our Las Vegas retreat. Ben, you want to say a little bit about what can they expect at this Las Vegas 2-day retreat?
Yeah, well, you can expect it's going to be awesome because it will be. But more specifically,
we'll be there.
Yeah, we'll be there. I'll buy you a beer if you come. The first day is the theme is marketing. So we're going to be talking about all about marketing, from lead gen to following up with leads to all of your marketing questions answered. So the first day, we basically do TED Talk style talks on different topics with marketing. There's typically about 6 of those. So our whole approach is we want to give you valuable information, but also give you go do this next so you can apply it to your business. Then on the second day, we're doing quarterly planning. And this is near and dear to my heart because it's definitely what took my business to the next level. I'm doing air quotes for everyone listening to this because that's so cheesy. But legitimately business doubled once I started quarterly planning and tracking my scorecard metrics and my dashboard and all those things. So I'm going to be taking you through planning out your entire Q2. So you know exactly what promotions you're running, you know what systems you're improving in the business, you know exactly what holes you're filling in your ship. And there's something about just being proactive that makes the biggest difference rather than just waiting for something to happen with clients. And I know that sounds obvious when you say it, and we all nod like, yes, we should be proactive. This is how you do it. Come to Vegas.
Yeah. Good pitch. Yeah. So we'll be in Vegas. I think it's Friday, Saturday, March 24th, 25th is the 2 days of the retreat. So check your calendar. If you're free, come join us. And as of the launching of this podcast, we have spots available, and the early bird period ends for getting one of those spots on February 26th. So go to the website, find it, and join our email list. You can be the first to know. But we really only sell, I think, 5 spots for each retreat that are not.
I think we're capping it at 5, and we usually sell out.
And we totally, So go get it, my friends. Commercial over. Now let's get to today's topic. So Ben, one of the things that I know you're a wizard at, and I know you help our Unicorn Society members with all the time, is figuring out what is the best low barrier offer for them. And so first you want to talk about why is it important to have a low barrier offer? Why does this topic even matter?
Yeah. Why is it important to have a low barrier offer? Well, I want to add the context for this. Until a year and a half ago, I didn't have one. I knew they were useful. I knew you should have them, and I just didn't need it. And then we added a low barrier offer, but the number one reason you should do it is it makes it easier for prospective people to try you out, for you to give for them value and see if they want to sign up. And lo and behold, we offered low barrier offers. And then that was right as we were in one of our COVID lockdowns. And instead of signing nobody up, we signed up 30 people over Zoom, thanks to a good LBO. So the reason I'm sharing this is if you don't have an LBO, like I didn't for a long time, you should implement one now, not wait until you absolutely need it like I did, because that was a dumb oversight. So the pushback I get on this, which ties into why you should offer it, is, well, I don't like discounting. I've been told I should never discount my service. If I discount my service, it discounts my value. And yes, The counter to that is, how are they going to know how good you are if you don't give them a chance to try you out?
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes that is a price thing, although it doesn't always have to be. You can add a really sick value stack and make it amazing. But the reality is, if someone's afraid to sign up to your 1-year program, even though you know it's exactly what they need, if they don't know it's what they need, they're not going to do it. But if you can give them a few sessions, a few weeks to be like, holy shit, these people are the real deal, you basically don't have to sell them anymore. They just sign themselves up. Like, hey, you want to keep doing this? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, great. Like, it is almost that simple. I've actually had conversion conversations that were that simple because we did such a good job in the LBO.
Yeah, well said, my friend. I think exactly that captures a lot of the resistance we hear people have. It's just like, well, I don't want a discount. I don't need to. I should just be able to sell people. Well, maybe you can when you're the new kid on the block and your business is a few years old and people are still stoked that you're around. But after you're not the new kid on the block and the shine wears off and the new car smell goes away, right, then you might have to work a little harder to turn people into fans. And I think, and we live in a try before you buy culture. Right? I can try before I buy anything. I can try before I buy snacks at Costco. Right? There's people handing out samples. I can try before I buy a Tesla. I can try before I buy any app on the internet with a 7-day free trial most of the time. Right? Like, we live in a try before you buy culture. And, gyms are scary places. So if I can't try before I buy, how do I know that I'm going to feel like I fit in? So it's kind of essential. It's like, it's non-negotiable. Yeah.
Yeah. I was just thinking, on the spectrum of Costco snacks to Tesla at cheap to expensive, we are in that spectrum. So it makes sense that we probably should follow in their footsteps.
Yeah, 100%. And to your point, it makes selling so much easier when you let them take an intermediary step. Yeah. So, talk through, what are the mechanics of what a good low barrier offer looks like?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a lot of things that can go into it. And if you're going to take anything from this podcast, I want it to be this: keep it really simple and try different stuff out. Because I've received the question a handful of times in the last 2 weeks from Unicorn Society members. And it's like, what's the best one? Which one should I do? Mm-hmm. And like, I've tried a whole bunch of different stuff. And as you'd expect, the cheaper it is, the more people sign up, but the less convert. The more expensive it is, the less people do it, but the more they convert. The principles that I generally encourage people to go with, and this is typically for small group or semi-private training, it should be 3, maybe 4 weeks, and it should be roughly 50-ish% of a normal membership cost. Now, that doesn't mean you have to be like 3 weeks for 50% off. It can be things like, 8 sessions for the price of 4. You can package it that way. It could be 2 for 1 on Valentine's Day. Valentine's Day is right around the corner. It could be doing something where if you have like massage or other services where it's like, buy this and get this, this, and this free. But if you were to do the math, it's roughly 50% of the total cost, but you're trying to convey it in a way where it isn't just, hey, we're trying to be cheap, but more like, hey, we're adding lots of extra value. And little things like get our meal planning guide if you're into meal plans, or get our habit change guide if that's more your deal. Here's our home workout. Here's our travel workout. Also get a couple bands or something. There's lots of ways you can spice it up, but 3 to 4 weeks, 50-ish%, and just try different things out. You're not going to know the best one. There is no best one. You'll have to figure out what your own is.
Yeah, well, I think that's a great takeaway, right? There's no magic bullet. There's no one LBO that everyone should always be using that's going to work now and then also going to work 3 years from now, right? You'll need to have a kind of a menu of low barrier offers or trials, whatever language you want to use, to let people try you out. And you should experiment. If it's the same for many, many years, it's probably not going to keep performing well. People like new. They like shiny, brand new things. And I also love the point you made, Ben, of like, the messaging here is not like, this is the cheapest thing you'll ever see. We want it to be no less than 50% of what they would normally pay, because that's part of how we qualify them, right? If we do, a month for $1, it's not wrong. But to Ben's point, right, you're not going to get probably the best conversion from people who are only willing to spend $1 on you, right? So, and asking them to go spend $1 one month and then 300 or more the next month is such a big leap. You have to be such a good salesperson. I know many of you listening are great salespeople, but it really just makes like an extra burden on you as a salesperson to try and get someone to go from $1 to $300, right? As opposed to, only half that. And so, so I think that those are really great points. I think the one place where maybe I would add something maybe slightly different is I actually think low barrier offers can be shorter. I know, you probably agree with this too, but I think most people probably can get away with 2 weeks. And because the reason I think for 2 weeks is that I think most clients don't need that long to know whether or not they like you. They can tell in the first few visits whether or not this is a place they want to go. And they don't need that long to actually experiment some wins, meet some friends, build a slightly routine. I think, the longer ones that last 4 weeks, I think it starts to get actually a little less exciting for them, right? That's become a little too routine after they've been coming for a whole month, perhaps. So again, this is going to be highly dependent on your avatar, right? I do think that I've heard from Unicorn Society members that folks who are a little bit older might need a little more time to actually acclimate and decide whether they like something, whereas younger folks are happier to make more split-second decisions after only coming for a week or two. That's a generalization. But the whole point I'm trying to make here is I think your listeners, you have to Ben's point, try a bunch of different shit and see what resonates with the kind of people you're trying to get through your door.
You make a really, really good point. Because yes, I am biased because our Gen Pop clients are typically 50 plus. But yeah, like I don't know how you'd actually figure this out like scientifically, but the perfect length of the LBO is when they're the most excited to buy, and it should like be ending at the peak excitement. And back to my experiment idea, like, which it was also my next point, is once you have this, nurture the shit out of those people, like daily, like shoot them a text after their first session, shoot them a video after the consultation, recapping how excited you are about their, what they're going to be doing with you. End of each week, touch base with them. But you can start to try, like, do we try converting them at the end of week 2 or at the beginning of week 3 or maybe week 4? And you'll start to see when people are the most excited. And then that gives you the information for, hey, here's how we make the next iteration of this. Most people will typically just play with price when you can change so many factors.
100%. Yeah. Can you go back through some of those things you mentioned maybe a little slower? Because I think this is critical. The whole point of doing a try before you buy is you get them in the door to have them build a relationship with you and your team and make friends with other clients and develop some small wins and learn that they can fit in. And it's a place where they can work on their goals. And throughout that whole experience, we should be following up with them to make sure that the experience is going well. So you can maybe just repeat some of the things you said a little slower for our listeners. Because I think this is the whole enchilada here.
Yeah, happy to. So we're still experimenting with some of these to know what, is best for our gym. So I'd encourage you to keep doing the same. But, we'll typically do like reminder texts before a consultation, as I imagine a lot of people do. But we're trying out at the end of the consultation, sending them a video from the general manager or salesperson just to be like, hey person, really excited to have you in the studio. I'm excited to help you with A, B, and C goals. We've got you in for your first session on date. If you need anything, this is my cell phone. Things that have worked really well for us is at the end of each week, the general manager, who's also our salesperson, Alicia, she's touching base with them, just be like, hey, how'd your first week go? Any feedback for us? Whenever possible, she'd have some information from like, Coach Justin said they're doing well with A and B. So we're like, hey, Sally, you're doing great with A and B. Any questions? We're also having the coaches do touch points with them to be like, hey, how do you like your programming so far? Is there anything you need to change? And obviously, or it sounds obvious that people should just say if something's hurting during a workout, but often they don't because gyms are terrifying for them. And they need a space where it's like, hey, this is a moment for feedback. Does everything feel good? Any feedback for us? What would you like to see next? What do you not like in your program? And just making it feel like a collaborative journey. So as a kind of rough, here's what you can do with this. Like every week during the trial, you could have 2 to 3 action steps of different people touching base with the member or prospective member, I guess, at this point, with different ways to ask for feedback. Do you know how to use the booking app? Are you in the Facebook group? Because it's the concept of like the third person. There's the client, there's the coach, there's another person. And if they don't have that third person relationship, they often won't say stuff. Like they won't tell the coach that they don't like them, but they'll tell the manager that they don't like the coach. And then you're like, oh, well, I'll just switch you to a different day. And they're like, oh, great. I didn't know that was an option. And all of a sudden that person who's going to cancel is now going to stick around for 2 years.
Yeah, I think it's a really great point. I'll just share from my experience. There was a time at Mark Fisher Fitness where I was doing, our strategy sessions or consultations and meeting a lot of brand new people. And that first relationship that someone develops with a person that first onboards them or intakes them into the gym is such a unique relationship. Right. Especially if that person is not the one that they're going to be training with on a regular basis, whether it's a salesperson or the owner, or in my case, I was both in that moment. And I say that because there are people who I onboarded into Mark Fisher Fitness who literally years later would still email me with questions. They haven't seen me in the building in maybe years, but they still think of my relationship with them as being special because I'm the first person, first face they saw, first conversation they had about their goals, first person they maybe opened up to, first person that showed them around and introduced them to people. And so, I will say, if you do have that model, that consultative model, where there's someone who's building that initial relationship and asking about their goals, leveraging that same person to follow up and continue to be the person who asks for feedback, make sure they're having a good time. That's so valuable if you can operationalize that kind of consistency. Because, again, there's people who, still email me to this day at Mark Fisher Fitness who I haven't seen in person in years, but still think of me as being like one of their contacts there because I was there first, So I think it's a great way to think about it.
What a testament to the value you gave in that consultation and that, and that
follow up. It was such a good first date that I'm so memorable that happens.
Well, that kind of I'm assuming, and maybe I shouldn't be assuming here, that for all of our listeners that you're going through a consultation where you're actually peeling the onion, where you're using coaching skills. This isn't just hey, by now or you're going to die young kind of situation. I imagine I'd like to think that's not happening in fitness, but I think it probably is.
I'd like to think our listeners would know that's probably not what a consultation would sound like if I'm doing it, but maybe not. Maybe that's new people. It was definitely a peeling the onion moment.
Yes. But that peeling the onion and then the follow-up, it's kind of like one long conversation, even though they made an agreement to at least do your LBO or 2 to 3 to 4 weeks or whatever it is with you. You're just kind of being hey, are you still enjoying that thing that we talked about? And instead of it being hey, you've bought, cool, check, added it to my KPIs or whatever. Now it's just one long conversation over the course of their training journey. But sometimes it's a week between replies. And then later down the line, it might be 1 or 2 years between replies, but you're still that go-to person. And you can talk some people off some serious ledges sometimes if you're using the right skills to be that go-to person. Not that you're trying to dupe them into staying, but when they have those people who are really hesitant and they're really, they're really afraid to buy, they're really afraid to do it. And you're oh my God, if you do this, it'll actually change your life. Now it helps them see that and trust you on that journey. And I mean, that's what I'm in it for. Not
it's
the 5%
a relationship.
already fit.
Yeah, that's it. It's a relationship that we're building with them. And I think that's part of what the low barrier offer is. It's this dating period where we're getting to know each other, building trust. And when you can do that well, it really does last throughout the course of your time with that client. Last question about LBOs so we can wrap things up here. The last thing I want to say is that, we're talking about building this relationship over the course of the 2, 3, 4 weeks of low barrier offer. And at some point there's a conversation to convert them to a long-term member. And so can you talk just a little bit about, we won't go into great detail about, sales strategies, but just from a high level, what are the most important kind of components of that conversation?
First one is in person over not in person 99 times out of 100. Which usually to make that happen is you need to look ahead at their schedule, see when they're coming in. Sometimes you need to come in a little bit early because they train before you normally get there. And it's hey, Michael, we're on week 2 of your 3-week trial. Just wanted to touch base to see if you're having a good time and what you want to do to continue. I see you're in at 7 a.m. What if we chat quickly at 8 a.m. before you go? You're just a little bit proactive on having that conversation. A big one for us has also been, and again, sounds kind of obvious, is make sure you go into it with specific positive feedback. So although as much as we are asking, how are you liking your time here? Because we want there to be a space for them to be heard. Hey, Michael, I was talking to Pam yesterday and she was saying your squats are really improved. Your knee pain is already reduced by half. Plus you're feeling more motivated than you have in years about the gym. Did I get that right? You're holy shit, this place is the bomb. You're awesome. Any other feedback for us? And then the conversation is it sounds like you're loving it here. Which do you want to do to continue? Not, oh, I'm scared, I got to put on a sales hat. Hey, it's okay if you continue. We're going to charge you more money. Just what option's best for you?
Which one? Yeah. Yeah, I think that's so smart. I think the most important place where I see people get stuck is that they just don't try to prioritize that face-to-face conversation. But these are people who are in your building for 2, 3, 4 weeks. And so you reaching out, texting, calling and saying, hey, I know you're here next Thursday. Can we talk for 5 minutes before or after? Right. That's the number one thing, right? If you don't schedule time to do it, it just won't happen. And I love going in with a specific feedback, going in both praising them for great things they're doing and asking for feedback. And then really saying, here are some options. Here are the 1 or 2 things I think that really make sense, given everything that you've told me about your goals and how well you've been doing. Here are the 1 or 2 things I think you should do next. Which one do you want to start with? Right? There's no apologizing. There's no cowering. There's no, there's no like tap dancing around it. It's like, you love this. We love working with you. You're clearly having success here. Let's keep this going. Which one makes sense? And I think it's a great high level overview of what those conversations can sound like. Yeah. Anything else you would add about LBOs that we didn't cover?
Yeah, just that I know we covered a fair number of things, but if you're hesitant and you're like afraid to pull the trigger, just pick one. The beauty about putting things out on social media and email is not long after it was out there, people forget it existed. So even if it falls on its face and you got to do a new one 2 weeks later, and that's like worst case scenario here, like the risk is almost zero.
Yeah.
But by doing it, you get so much more information, plus new clients to help and make money off of, and, serve your purpose to the world with your gym. That's what gets you going to be able to refine it to be like, I bet this is going to kind of work. But it takes some practice to get there. So if you're nervous, don't be. We all were. Just try it on and see what happens.
Yeah, great advice. Just put on that experimenter scientist hat and just be like, okay, I'm going to run this experiment. Let's see how it goes. So yeah, I think that's great advice, Ben. All right, friends. Well, I'm gonna pull up there because I think we could keep going, but we're gonna keep this one short and pithy here. So I hope you got some real value out of this conversation about LBOs. Thanks, Ben, for doing this. We're gonna hopefully have more of Ben on the podcast, y'all. So if you enjoyed this, please let us know. You can email us, michael@businessunicorns.com, ben@businessunicorns.com. Let us know what you want Ben and I to talk about next, what topics you want us to cover, and if you enjoyed this podcast, please leave a 5-star review anywhere you listen. We really, really appreciate you helping us spread the word. And this is one last pitch. If you want to join us in Vegas, please do go to the website and find us. Early bird ends February 26th, and we'll be in Vegas March 24th, 25th. We hope to see you there. Thanks so much, Ben. See you on the next one.
Thanks.